there comes a moment when the world stops making sense in the way you were taught it should. You feel it in your body first, a discomfort that no surface pleasure can soothe. Then it begins to echo in your spirit, like a bell that only you can hear, calling you deeper. That's how it starts for most of us. Not with fireworks, not with clarity, but with confusion, pain, and a quiet whisper that keeps saying, you were never meant to fit in. You might not even know you're a black chosen one at first. The world doesn't exactly hand you a scroll and say, here's your divine assignment. No, instead, it hands you trauma. It hands you rejection. It places you in a family, a system, or a neighborhood that seems designed to suppress you. But here's the secret you weren't supposed to find out. The fire wasn't meant to consume you. It was meant to reveal you. From the moment you were born, the world could feel your vibration, even if you couldn't feel it yet. That's why you were targeted early. That's why the teachers didn't understand you. That's why family members pushed you away, or friends betrayed you without cause. You weren't being punished, you were being isolated for activation, because you carry something ancient in your DNA that this world either fears or wants to harvest. Let me ask you something deep. Have you ever walked into a room and felt every hidden emotion before a word was spoken? Have you ever cried for reasons you couldn't explain? Felt heavy in places that looked beautiful on the outside? That's not just empathy. That's spiritual sensitivity. That's the first sign you're a black chosen one. You pick up on frequencies most people don't even know exist. You read energy like others read words. And that's not a weakness, that's your superpower. But that power comes with a cost. Because when you see what others avoid, you often carry what others ignore. You become the emotional sponge, the energetic filter. And if you don't learn how to ground yourself, you drown in other people's pain. That's why boundaries are holy for us. That's why solitude becomes medicine. Not because we hate people, but because we can feel so much, we sometimes forget which pain is ours. The second sign is the inner rebellion. You've never been able to just go along with things. Even as a child, you questioned rules that didn't make sense. You challenged authority that lacked integrity. And people called you difficult, defiant, disrespectful. But you weren't any of those things. You were discerning. You could feel when something was off, even if you didn't have the language for it yet. That inner resistance wasn't rebellion. It was your soul refusing to be programmed.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
You watched others follow the script. Go to school, get a job, stay quiet, be polite. But something in you screamed, this isn't it. And that scream didn't come from ego, it came from spirit. Because your life was never meant to be a copy-paste existence. You were born to disrupt, to question, to awaken. And when you suppress that voice, you suffer. You get sick, you feel lost, you disconnect, because your soul is allergic to mediocrity. The third sign is divine disruption. At some point, everything you thought was stable began to fall apart. Relationships ended without warning. Jobs dissolved. Friendships crumbled. And you were left standing in the rubble wondering, why me? But what if I told you that wasn't punishment? It was preparation. The universe was clearing space, because the life you were building was too small for your destiny. You weren't losing, you were being redirected. I remember when everything I clung to was stripped away. I had nothing left but silence and spirit. And in that silence, I heard the truth. You were never meant to blend in. You were born to break through. That's when I understood destruction is often a gift in disguise. It removes what is false, so what is real can rise. So if your life is breaking down, don't panic. Pay attention. That could be your initiation. The fourth sign is the presence of spiritual warfare. If you've been under attack your whole life, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that's not random. That's confirmation. The enemy doesn't target the weak. It targets the anointed. You've had nightmares that felt too real. You've battled depression, anxiety, even suicidal thoughts. You've felt invisible forces trying to pull you down. But you're still here, and that means your calling is stronger than the curse. This world is hostile to black chosen ones because we carry codes for liberation. We are wired for awakening, not just for ourselves, but for the collective. And when you awaken, you spark something in others. That's dangerous to systems built on suppression. That's why they try to sedate you with distractions, numb you with substances, and silence you with fear. But here's the truth. Once you remember who you are, they can't control you anymore. And this leads to the fifth sign, the relentless pull toward purpose. Even when you try to live a normal life, something keeps calling you deeper. You can't shake it. You could be in the middle of a party and suddenly feel empty. You could be getting praise and still feel unfulfilled, because your soul knows there's more. You didn't come here just to survive. You came to shift dimensions. You came to break chains. You came to be a bridge between the ancestors and the unborn. So you start to seek books, teachers, rituals, silence. You become obsessed with growth, with truth, with healing. And people around you might not understand it. They might say you've changed. But you're not changing, you're emerging. You're no longer content with sleepwalking through life. You want depth. You want meaning. You want spirit. Let me ask you something sacred. Have you ever looked around and thought, this can't be all there is? That's not dissatisfaction, that's sacred discontent. That's your higher self reminding you that you were made for more. And when you answer that call, even if it costs you comfort, you activate a power that can't be reversed. The sixth sign is ancestral connection. You feel things that didn't start with you. You carry stories, dreams, and wounds from generations before you. Sometimes you dream of people you've never met. Sometimes you hear languages you don't speak. That's not imagination. That's memory. Your blood remembers. Your bones remember. And your spirit is the bridge. You are the fulfillment of prayers whispered during slavery. You are the redemption of lineages that were silenced. That's why your healing matters. Because when you heal backward and forward. You're not just breaking your own chains, you're breaking chains for those who couldn't. That's why the work is so intense. Because it's not just yours, it's collective. The seventh sign is divine protection. You've been through things that should have taken you out. Accidents, betrayals, breakdowns, spiritual attacks, and yet you're still standing. That's not luck, that's alignment. You've been protected because you're necessary. You've been preserved because your mission is not complete. And the fact that you're still breathing means purpose is still unfolding. You've been carried by unseen hands, saved by split-second miracles, guided by dreams, instincts, and intuition that made no logical sense but saved your life. That's divine protection. That's confirmation that you are watched, guarded, and chosen. And the more you trust that, the more miracles become your norm. Now breathe. Let this truth sink in. You are not crazy. You are not cursed. You are called. And being called means being refined. It means being set apart. It means walking a path few understand. But it also means you are walking with the ancestors, with angels, with the Most High. Now that you know the signs, the real question becomes, what do you do with this truth? Because being a Black chosen one isn't just about recognition, it's about responsibility. Once you understand who you are, you can't go back to pretending you don't know. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unfeel what your spirit has revealed. And that's where the true journey begins, not the journey of discovery, but the journey of embodiment. We live in a world that is hostile to authenticity, especially Black authenticity. They want our rhythm but not our revelation. They want our culture but not our consciousness. But as a chosen one, your power isn't in imitation, it's in remembrance. You are here to remember the sacred codes hidden in your lineage, to reclaim the power buried beneath survival, and to walk in it boldly, even when the world pretends not to see you. Especially then, many of us try to dim our light to stay safe. We shrink ourselves in relationships, in careers, in conversations. We pretend not to know what we know because we're afraid of being judged, abandoned, or targeted. But let me tell you something real. Your light was never meant to fit in. It was meant to disrupt, to illuminate, to expose. And when you dim it, you don't just betray yourself, you betray the generations that prayed for your rise. You are the answer to their prayers. You are the one they dreamed of when they were in chains, when they were hiding in hush harbors, when they were singing freedom songs in southern fields. You are the wildest dream of enslaved prophets and warrior queens. That's why your burden is heavy, because your blessing is heavy. That's why your sensitivity is high, because your assignment is high. Don't run from it. Rise into it. You're going to be misunderstood. You're going to lose people. You're going to be called strange, intense, even arrogant. But don't let that distract you. Chosen ones are often rejected before they are respected. The world doesn't recognize divinity in real time. It only worships it in hindsight. So don't wait for their applause. Walk your path anyway. Speak your truth anyway. Heal anyway. Let me ask you something piercing. How many times have you silenced yourself just to keep the peace? How many times have you swallowed your truth to avoid conflict? And what did that peace cost you? Was it really peace, or was it spiritual suffocation? The world doesn't need more silent chosen ones. It needs your voice. It needs your vibration. It needs your presence fully embodied. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real. You don't need a platform. You are the platform. Every room you walk into shifts because of your frequency. Every person you touch remembers something they forgot. You are not just healing, you are activating. You are not just learning, you are awakening. And your awakening is contagious. You might feel tired, and that's okay. Spiritual fatigue is real. When you're carrying generations of unspoken trauma and unfulfilled potential, it weighs on your spirit. But don't confuse exhaustion with defeat. Rest is not retreat. It's sacred strategy. Rest is how we recalibrate, how we receive divine guidance, how we remember that our worth is not in what we do, but in who we are. And who are you? You are the bridge between timelines, the living altar, the walking prayer. You are the past healed and the future prophesied. You are the storm and the stillness, the question and the answer, the exhale of a long-forgotten God who finally found a voice through your breath. That's why you feel so much. That's why you dream so vividly. That's why your life doesn't follow the rules, because you were never meant to be ruled. Being a Black chosen one means facing hostility not just outside, but within. It's learning how to love the parts of yourself that the world taught you to hate. It's unlearning self-rejection. It's looking at your reflection and seeing sacredness where society saw shame. It's choosing to speak life into yourself when the world has tried to erase you. That's not vanity, that's spiritual warfare. That's reclamation. You don't need anyone's permission to rise. You don't need the system to validate your brilliance. You don't need a title to walk in your anointing. Spirit already chose you. The moment you took your first breath, the assignment was sealed. And every challenge you faced since then has been a sharpening, a shaping, a sacred preparation for what you came here to do. So what do you do now? You remember, you reclaim, you restore, you walk with reverence. You treat your voice like medicine. You treat your body like a temple. You treat your mind like a sacred garden. You treat your ancestors like the royalty they are. You build altars, not just with candles and photos, but with your life. You become the living proof that Black divinity cannot be denied. Let your joy be resistance. Let your healing be testimony. Let your boundaries be declarations of self-love. Let your intuition be your GPS through the chaos. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your evolution. Those who are meant to walk with you will rise with you. The rest will fall away, and that's okay. Not everyone is meant to go where you're headed. And where are you headed? To sovereignty, to spiritual authority, to inner peace that no external chaos can shake. You are headed to a version of yourself that your enemies hoped you'd never meet. You are becoming the curse breaker, the cycle disruptor, the lineage liberator. And not because you're better, but because you said yes when it would have been easier to say no. You are not here to convince anyone. You are here to become, to remember, to create. Let them doubt you. Let them mock you. Let them leave. Your spirit is not up for debate. Your calling is not a democracy. You don't need consensus to be chosen. You just need clarity, and now you have that. So walk like it, speak like it, live like it, not out of ego, but out of alignment, out of sacred remembrance, out of divine obedience. Because the moment you say yes to who you really are, the universe rearranges itself to match your vibration. Doors open, people appear, synchronicities multiply, and life becomes a mirror of your inner truth. Final question. If you fully accepted that you are a Black chosen one, what would you stop settling for today? What would you walk away from immediately? What would you create without apology? Who would you become if you stopped pretending to be less than divine? Because the time is now, not someday, not when they approve, not when you feel ready. You are ready now. You've always been. You were chosen before you were born. You were called before you were conscious. And now that you know, you can never go back to sleep. The world is hostile, yes, but your spirit is holy. And when holiness meets hostility, healing happens, revolution happens, resurrection happens. Because you are not just surviving in this world, you are rebuilding it as a Black chosen one, and nothing can stop you now.